Okay, welcome back. So if you made it this far, you've successfully installed Docker and you are ready to, to start running some containers. So if you remember my last challenge at the end of at the end of the installation was to run a hello world a command for Docker. And so the answer to that question, hopefully it didn't take you too long to Google it. So Docker run hello world. There we go. All right, and boom, hello from Docker. So this message shows that your installation appears to be working correctly. So awesome. We've if you weren't aware that this command that we just ran is actually running a container. So it ran a container. So, this is the first container you've probably ever run. Well, congratulations. So a couple of important things to note here. So one thing that you might be wondering is like, where did this container come from? Like, how did this even work? So you can see right here. So it's saying unable to find image hello world latest locally. So what it's basically doing is this is your image name, and so it's trying to find a local instance of this image. And when you don't include any type of colon and then message after the colon, so that's called a tag. So it defaults to the latest tag. So because it couldn't find a hello world latest tag locally, it's going to go and pull from whatever registry is the default for your Docker instance. So every Docker instance, when you first install, the default registry is your is Docker Hub. And so what a registry is and what Docker Hub is essentially a collection of a bunch of images that are managed, and they're managed by account, which is library, and then image name. So basically it's saying, hey, Docker Hub, do you have this image library hello world? And if it does, then it pulls it down, which obviously it did. So it started its pull. So it's pulled the image down, and now that it's pulled after this, pull complete, it runs the image. So what occurs there is it's actually running what the image is telling it to run, which I assume this image probably has just a cat command or a echo command to print out this information. And to give you a better idea of sort of what Docker Hub is when it's pulling from, or where it's pulling from, if you go online, you can go to dockerhub.com, and then you can search for hello world, and it'll show this official hello world instance. So this is the image that we just pulled down. So yeah, there's a bunch of free images out there that you can use, from Nginx to Jenkins to Java. There's a bunch of images already out there that you can reuse and run. Some things are very useful to just pull down and run, such as like Postgres or MySQL, where you need to create a database really quickly locally. Something like that would be very useful, and it's completely free. And they've sort of rebranded Docker Hub now as Docker Store, in Docker's attempts to monetize their product. But Docker Hub's still up and still useful, and I find the interface a little more simple. All right, so you may be thinking, so is this container still running? What's happening? So no, the container is not running, and the way you can find out to ensure this is a little bit of a little dry run in the Docker CLI. So Docker PS. So Docker PS tells us our actively running containers. All right. So Docker PSA, so PS hyphen A, shows us all containers that are on the system currently. So on our instance, we have a closed or exited hello world instance, and unless you when you run the container and give it an explicit name, Docker comes up with some funny combination of adjectives and nouns to give you an interesting name for your instance. So it might be a little bit easier to remember than the container ID. And so quickly, just to keep our systems nice and clean, what you can do, the way you can remove these is by doing docker rm and copying either the container ID or the name, and then boom, that means it is gone. So now if I rerun docker ps-a, it's gone. Okay. So, all right. So we've pulled down our first container. We've ran our first container. So how would you build a container? So, that requires sort of a templated file called a Docker file. And essentially what that does is it's your blueprint or your building blocks for how your container gets built. So let's take the hello world as an example. So if we go back to here, we can see these here have the Docker files related to the various options here. So we'll do the latest right here. So this is probably the one that we pulled down. All right. So it takes you to a oh wow, yeah, that is as bare as it gets. So basically what a Docker file is it's a series of instructions with arguments. All right. So these will be your instruction commands and these will be your arguments. So essentially what's going on here is you have a base image, all right? And so your base image is sort of the initial building block, and Scratch is as basic as it gets. There's tons of base images that you can use any image as a base image, and there's tons of ones that are recommended out there. Wheezy is one. If you are familiar with like Ubuntu, CoreOS, CentOS, there's Red Hat has their own. There's tons of base images out there that you can use. So we'll create our own sort of ad hoc hello world here in a second. And if you look, so it looks like what's occurring here is they have a hello world directory, a hello directory wherever this Docker file is being built. It's copying that hello directory into the root of the container of the image. And then it is running the command, and that command outputs the information that we just saw, which is right here, right? Okay, so let's build our own version of this, all right, just to get a little bit more of an idea. So Docker file, all right, so remember every Docker file needs to have a from instruction. So instead of doing exactly what they're doing, let's try something a little different. Let's do Ubuntu, all right? Okay, and remember if we don't do an explicit, it's going to do latest. So I'll usually like to just explicitly say latest. And then if you ever want to, if you're in the future like, oh, I only like to use, version 16.04, then you can change latest to 16.04 or whatever. You can, that's sort of the way that you can version from base images or from any image. All right. So instead of doing all the crazy stuff that Hello World does, like having its own file, I'm just going to do a simple command. So command is what runs as soon as the container starts up. So if I do a command, I can do echo hello. This is the first container I have built. Alright, that way we know I'm not BSing you. Alright, so I've saved it now. Okay, so ls, so it's saved. Alright, so whenever you want to run, build a Docker file, you are going to use the commands docker build. Alright, so the next thing is going to be the path to the Docker file. So if this were in a directory, then I would do the directory name. Since it's in the current directory, I can just do a period. And that's kind of a common thing, is you'd usually have whatever directory you're in is where you do the building, but it's not necessarily required. All right, and then an optional thing, a highly recommended optional thing to do is to give it an image name. All right, so we'll make this James Hello World. All right, so we're gonna build it. Okay, so again, another important thing, so whenever you build, just like whenever we were running, it's trying to find this image because this is our base image. We need this to build the rest of what we're working with. So it's going to go out and try and if it doesn't currently have it in our local Docker instance, then it's going to go try and pull it again from our Docker Hub. So while it's doing that, which looks like it's taking a little bit of time, we'll go and check out what that looks like in Docker Hub. So Docker Hub and then Ubuntu. All right. Okay, and you can see here the latest and greatest versions. All right. And the latest is 16.04. So there you go. So this will be the version that we are on. So hopefully it is nearly done. All right, it is done. So it's finished pulling. All right. Now it also saved essentially our command that will be run whenever I run this container. All right. And it has successfully built it, and it's tagged as James Hello World latest. Awesome. Again, :latest because I didn't specify. All right. So now if I run docker run James Hello World. All right. Boom. Hello, this is the first container I've built. So we've literally just built our own Hello World application in a container. So, and again, if we go to Docker PS, it's not running anymore because it has finished running. If we do a Docker PS-A, oh, we have our container closed. Condescending query. All right. So again, to try and keep our computer nice and clean, we will remove it. So a thing to note here, every time you are running an instance of this container, it's basically taking this built image here and creating an instance of it. So if you're handling a lot of images and you've got a lot of images in your that are exited, that's taking up that could be taking up a ton of space on your computer because it's creating duplicate instances of that container every time. So it's always good to stay conscientious of keeping your unnecessary exited containers out of your system. All right. Okay, so now we have a little bit of an understanding of running a container. We have a little bit of understanding about how to build a container. So right now what I want to do is sort of clarify the terminology, because I've been tossing around a lot of words here, and just to make sure that we're all straight and we get it, there's no confusion. So to eventually have a running container, it first starts with a Docker file, all right, which then goes through a Docker build process. All right. So which creates an image. All right. So that will do nothing. All right. And so then we take an image and it takes a Docker run command and creates a container, or a, container instance is another way of saying it. All right. So that's essentially the way that you would create a container. Is you would create your Docker file, include all of your necessary base images, your necessary tools that you want installed, and then you have your command to run. So for instance, for the next thing we will be doing is creating our first Nginx container with a web application. So now that we know a little bit about how to create a Docker file, how to build it, we'll try and do something that might be a little more useful for deploying applications now. So for the challenge of the next one, if you can figure out how to create and run a Docker Nginx container, that's what we'll be doing in the next thing. So you can try it out on your own, and you'll soon see the answer. Thank you.